The rain fell in sheets that night, turning the highway into a river of brake lights and desperation. Most people would have driven past, too busy, too scared, too wrapped up in their own problems to stop. But Marcus wasn't most people. When he saw the crumpled sedan against the guardrail, steam rising from its crushed hood like a dying breath, something in his chest tightened. He pulled over without thinking, his hands already reaching for his phone to dial 911 before his truck had fully stopped. The woman trapped inside was conscious but fading, her eyes flickering like a candle fighting the wind. Blood trickled down her temple, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Marcus wedged himself through the passenger door, the metal groaning in protest, and knelt beside her. "Don't cry, I'm here now," he whispered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." Her eyes focused on his face, and despite the pain etched across her features, something like recognition flickered there. Her lips moved, barely audible above the rain hammering the roof. "I knew you before." Marcus froze. He'd never seen this woman in his life. Her dark hair was matted with blood, her designer coat torn and muddied, but her face was completely unfamiliar. "You must be confused," he said gently, taking off his jacket to press against a gash on her arm. "Just try to stay still. Don't try to talk." But her hand caught his wrist with surprising strength. "The bridge," she breathed. 17 years ago. You were just a kid." The memory hit Marcus like a physical blow. He was 12 years old again, standing on the Jefferson Street Bridge on the worst day of his life. His father had just died, his mother was drinking herself into oblivion, and the foster care people were coming in the morning. He'd climbed onto that railing, looked down at the dark water below, and seriously considered letting go. And then a car had stopped. A woman, young, maybe in her 20s, had gotten out and walked toward him. She hadn't yelled or grabbed him or called him crazy. She'd just stood there, a respectful distance away, and started talking. About her own pain. About her brother who'd taken his life when she was 15. About how close she'd come to following him. About how glad she was that she hadn't, because she'd have missed so much beauty, so much love, so many moments that made the pain worth carrying. She'd talked until his hands stopped shaking. Until he climbed down. Until he promised to call the suicide prevention number she'd written on a napkin from her car. She'd waited with him until his neighbor arrived to take him home, and then she'd driven away. He'd never even learned her name. "That was you." Marcus's voice cracked. The woman before him looked so different now, older, more refined, her face bearing the subtle lines of a life well lived. But the eyes. God, the eyes were the same. Kind and knowing and impossibly warm. She nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. "I never forgot you. I used to wonder, if you made it. If it was enough." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, mixing with the rain that dripped through the car's broken windows. "You saved my life that night. I went into foster care, but I made it through. Got a scholarship, became a teacher. I've got a wife now, 2 kids. I coach Little League on weekends." His voice broke completely. "I'm here because you were there." The woman, Sarah, the paramedics would later tell him her name was Sarah Chen, smiled through her pain. Then it mattered. That's all I ever wanted to know. The next 20 minutes were a blur of emergency responders, the jaws of life, and the careful extraction of Sarah from the wreckage. Marcus stood back, soaked to the bone, answering questions from the police while watching the ambulance doors close on the woman who'd given him back his future all those years ago. 3 days later, Marcus sat in Sarah's hospital room. She'd suffered a concussion, a fractured arm, and several cracked ribs, but she would make a full recovery. Her husband, Daniel, had been called from a business trip in Chicago and had arrived the next morning. Her 2 teenage daughters visited every day after school. "I still can't believe it," Sarah said, propped up on pillows, her arm in a cast covered with get well messages. "Of all the people who could have stopped that night, it was you." "My wife says there are no coincidences," Marcus replied, settling into the chair beside her bed. "She says the universe has a way of balancing the scales." Sarah laughed softly, then winced. "Remind me not to laugh for a few weeks. The doctors said if I hadn't kept pressure on your arm, you might have lost too much blood before the ambulance arrived." Marcus shook his head in wonder. "You gave me 17 more years of life, and I got to give you however many more you've got coming." "A trade I'd make again in a heartbeat," Sarah said. She reached for a folder on her bedside table, pulling out a worn, faded napkin encased in a protective sleeve. The same napkin she'd given him on the bridge, with the suicide prevention hotline number still visible in faded ink. I kept it, she explained. After my brother died, I made a promise to myself that I'd try to be there for others the way I wished someone had been there for him. That night on the bridge, you were the first person I'd actually stopped for. I was terrified I'd say the wrong thing, make it worse. Her eyes glistened. I had no idea if it worked until I saw your face in that car. Marcus pulled out his wallet and carefully extracted his own weathered piece of paper. The same napkin, kept safe for 17 years, moved from wallet to wallet, a talisman of hope on his darkest days. They held them up side by side, two halves of the same moment, preserved across time. I teach 8th grade now, Marcus told her. Every year, I tell my students a story about a stranger who chose to care. About how one moment of kindness can echo through decades. I never tell them it's about me, but I hope some kid who needs to hear it really listens. Sarah wiped her eyes. You're passing it forward. We both are. Over the following weeks, Marcus visited Sarah regularly as she recovered. Their families met, shared dinners, swapped stories. Marcus's kids called her Aunt Sarah within a month. The local news picked up the story, and for a brief while, they became minor celebrities, proof that goodness exists, that people still stop to help, that the kindness you put into the world really does come back. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments. In Sarah attending Marcus's son's baseball games, cheering louder than anyone else in the stands. In Marcus helping Sarah's daughters with their college essays, offering the perspective of someone who'd been through the system and made it out. In the foundation they started together, training people to recognize and respond to someone in crisis, creating an army of bridge talkers for the next generation. On the anniversary of the accident, they returned to the Jefferson Street Bridge together. They didn't climb the railing or make grand gestures. They simply stood there, two people connected by twin moments of grace, and looked out at the water that had once seemed like an ending. Thank you for stopping, Marcus said quietly. Thank you for stopping, Sarah replied. And in that exchange was everything, the beautiful, terrible, miraculous truth that we're all just walking each other home. That the person you save might one day save you. That kindness is never wasted, even when you can't see where it lands. That sometimes the universe really does balance the scales, and that the most powerful thing any of us can do is simply be there when someone needs us to be. As they walked back to their cars, Sarah's husband waiting in one, Marcus's family in the other, they both understood something profound. They hadn't saved each other's lives. They'd given each other reasons to keep living them. And that, in the end, made all the difference.